This is David Goldman, Asia Times Deputy Editor, speaking to you from New York City, the evening of November 4th. The Federal Reserve yesterday had its grand deliberation on the subject of the future of monetary policy and decided to do practically nothing. That is, it decided to reduce very modestly its $120 billion a month of purchases of U.S. Treasury securities, but to do nothing with interest rates. And today the Bank of England, taking a cue from the Fed, failed to raise interest rates as many observers had expected them to do. This gave a lift to tech stocks, which, as we've discussed many times in the past, trade in lockstep with long-term interest rates. For the financials and other parts of the stock market, maybe not so much. The Dow Jones average was down. The extraordinary thing is the extent to which the Fed is ignoring not the light at the end of the tunnel, but an express train hurtling at the U.S. economy at breakneck speed, and that is inflation. If you look at the chart of the day, we see the unit labor cost index of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is the most comprehensive measure of the cost of wages and benefits. And we've annualized the quarterly rate of increase. The 1.5% increase in the third quarter, just reported this morning, is the largest since the series was first compiled about 20 years ago, and that translates into an annual rate of more than 6%. We haven't seen anything like this since 1981, in fact. The labor market is doubly tight, first because the economy is trying to regain the ground it lost during the COVID epidemic, and secondly because several million workers have gone on permanent furlough or retired or simply left the labor force for one reason or another, in part because the federal government has paid them a great deal to do so. So inflationary pressures are showing themselves everywhere in manufacturing and services. If we look at the Philadelphia Fed's index for non-manufacturing industries, more companies report a jump in their input costs than at any time since the late 1970s. That's what happens when you put $6 trillion of stimulus into the economy and give people an incentive to stay out of the labor force. So the Federal Reserve is simply not in the real world. For the time being, the bond market will trade according to the Fed's intentions, but this can't last forever, and as the Fed gets further and further behind the curve, as more inflation pressures build up, at some point we're going to have an explosion of interest rates. In the meantime, all we've had is an explosion of the Democratic Party, which, as we saw in Virginia and New Jersey on Election Day last Tuesday, the voters are blaming for this burst of inflation. This is David Goldman, Asia Times Deputy Editor, speaking to you from New York.